How are you,
Hey
sir?
there. Hi, good morning. I'm great. How are you?
Good. Good morning.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Thanks for coming on.
How are things in New York?
Had a little rain this morning. Been a little hot, but the last couple of days it cooled off. So
You're getting some of the southern weather up in New York.
right. Now, where are you?
I'm in Birmingham, Alabama, where it's actually a little bit cooler today and sunny. So you get the humidity and the rain.
All right. You know what? Why don't you introduce yourself, and then we get into the questions, and then we'll get into your journey.
Excellent. So I'm Brian Hart Hoffman. I am the editor-in-chief of Bake From Scratch magazine and the Bake Feed here on Instagram. And I'm also the president and chief creative officer of Hoffman Media, my family's magazine media company that my mom and three other women started back in 1983.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So do you know Copper John Woodworks?
No,
He's in Birmingham. He
Oh,
lives in
wow.
Hoover.
Okay. Well, I'm going to have to make that connection.
And listen, from a fellow woodworker, don't call him if you don't have anything to eat.
Hey, that's the good thing about baking. I have tons to eat at any given moment of the day. So I think we'll be pretty good there.
All right. So let's get into some questions.
Sure.
What word or phrase do you overuse?
Oh my goodness. Probably, oh my goodness. What do I overuse? I don't know. That's a good one. I talk so much, I would have to rewind all the footage and listen to myself. You could, if any of my friends are watching, they could comment in and say, here's what he says way too much.
All right. What is your least favorite thing to do?
Oh, it's a good thing that I'm a twin and I work with my brother also, because budgeting, finances, accounting, all of that part of business is really not where I shine and thrive. So I get to do a lot of the creative work, and I have that twin to handle his side of the brain and do all the business stuff.
That's pretty cool. So is it a partnership, or he works in the company?
So we both work in the company. Our mom is the CEO, and we are both co-presidents of the company with her. And he lives in New Orleans and works out of our office there. And my
That's
mom
where
and
I'm
I
from.
are here. And oh, you're from New Orleans? Okay, so he's there.
All right. Cool. All right. What is? Wait a second. What we need to do? Does your brother bake as well, or no?
No, he loves cooking on the savory side of things. So he loves all of the Cajun and Creole cuisine. He loves making gumbo, etouffee. He really loves the food scene down in Louisiana.
Because I have a high school, all black, all male, Catholic, and we need to somehow hook him up.
Yeah, absolutely.
We need to connect him. We'll deal with that later.
Yeah. We'll do all the connections after. I've got Birmingham. I've got to like connect with some baking and my brother in Louisiana. I like what's happening here.
What is your most favorite thing to do?
Oh man, baking and travel equally.
Okay.
Yeah, both bring me a lot of joy.
Where is the place you enjoy travel the most?
Wow. I love the Caribbean. I mean, I love just time in the islands, but I've traveled extensively in France. I'm like an unapologetic Francophile. The cuisine, the history, just, any chance to be in Europe. And I mean, really, I should say anywhere, because I feel like limiting yourself to say, I have one favorite place. That's, I have places I love visiting again and again, but I also think my favorite places are probably the ones I haven't been to yet. So
Right.
I don't like to limit that one either. Yeah.
Okay, cool. What is the one thing your spouse or significant other would like to change about you?
Steven would love it if I enjoyed doing the laundry as much as I told him I did when we first met. That's a daily conversation in the house about, remember when you said you loved doing laundry? And I thought, yeah, well, I have to own that one. I did sell it pretty hard, but yeah, not so much anymore.
That's funny because the typical dude lying about what he does until it's time to show up.
Well, I did it really great in the beginning. I mean, I actually gave it like a ton of effort, but then it just
for how long?
Almost 10 years. Yeah. Probably year 2 or 3, it started to have a little bit of a drop
off. What makes you tick?
Oh, I think I get my energy from people. So magazine readers, friends, people in the baking and creative world, conversations like this with you. I think it's probably been one of the hardest things for me during quarantine and distancing and working from home every day is my people fuel has been deprived. So I've noticed that's been a big, like motivator for me is when I'm around my team or just people that, that I get to interact with. I'm fueled by people.
I'm glad I caught you at the right time.
Yeah.
Who's your favorite baker? Or do you have a favorite baker?
I don't know that I can have just one favorite.
Or a few. Who comes up?
I think of Umber Ahmed. She owns Mazadar Bakery in New York. I have such a connection with her just personally. And I also love everything she makes. And there's soul and there's passion and there's history and her, cultural influence, but yet like just such I don't know. I think she's just such an amazing person. And it's a genuine passion when you look at someone that left the finance industry as an executive in, I can't even remember if it was just like, capital investment funds, to step out and say, okay, I'm going to bake because I'm passionate about it. I think my appreciation level for people like her that take huge leaps of faith like that, and then they nail it when they open a bakery and deliver that same passion every day. She comes to mind.
Wait a second. Do you have stock in her company?
No. No. Yeah, I guess I should be disclosing that, right? Like, yeah, so I own part of her bakery. And no, I don't. And then, I think about like my grandmother and just the times at holidays when we've had her angel biscuits or her holiday cookies and stuff that, is a whole different side of baking, but truly it's what gets most of us into baking and memories of it from someone close to me like that.
Okay, cool. What irks you the most?
I want people to give it their best every day and in anything they commit to do. So I think when I see people maybe cutting corners or just not giving it their all, I just want to have the shake you moment and say, come on, give it your all, because I think it's evident to people, customers or friends or just people in your everyday life. When you're genuine, when you're passionate, and when you give it your all, people see it. And I think that's when my true appreciation is okay, we're there,
Yeah. It's pretty evident to see when someone has their heart in something.
Yeah.
And when someone doesn't, like you with the laundry.
I am gonna hand you that. Yes, absolutely.
Your heart just wasn't in it.
Nope. So I had to stop doing it. I had to take my own advice.
What sound makes you happiest?
What sound? Ocean waves crashing.
Okay.
The exhale, the sound of relaxation.
Did you go to what body of water is closest to you?
So we have the Alabama Gulf Coast, so Gulf Shores, Orange Beach, and then close to Birmingham is a big lake, Smith Lake, that I spend a good bit of time there with my cousin and her family. They have a house there, so we spend some weekends at the lake with our godsons and
Okay.
with family. Yeah.
All right, cool. What sound bothers you the most?
Oh, the laundry when it's time to fold.
Damn washing machine.
Yeah, yeah, that sounds pretty bad.
You know what? So, okay, for those who just came on, we keep joking about laundry because I asked Brian a question and his answer was laundry because he told his partner that he liked doing laundry. And years now into the relationship, he really doesn't like doing laundry anymore. So that's one of the things that's our inside joke.
And now it's driving all these answers. I thought anything that bothers me, I've got to like draw it right back to the laundry.
It's about passion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or lack thereof. Other than your own, what profession would you like to try?
Wow. I'd love to be a language teacher. I love learning and I love seeing other people learn new things, and language has always been something that I'm intrigued by. I've always been disappointed when I meet friends of mine that grew up in France or Germany or other countries around the world where students learn multiple languages from the time they're children. And I think about my education and how we didn't start Spanish or French. I think it was 2 languages available until you're in high school, and you probably already don't care enough that that's one of those things that I would love to go back in time and be a part of that change of the US education system so there's more language, and I think teaching language would be great.
Yeah, I think, and I'm a huge patriot. I love this country. But I think too often, for too long, we relied on being great.
Absolutely. I think it's, I that's part of what travel opens my eyes to, is to be in another country where another language is spoken. And I always try to learn a few words, just anything to show people that I'm wanting to connect to them in their country, in their language. And then I see other travelers that, they think if they speak English louder, it means someone's going to hear them. And I just want to shake them a little bit and say, do your part here. And you can't desire travel and desire cultural exposure and not attempt to connect. Yeah. And an arrogance and just a kind of like, well, we're English speaking. That should be the language that everyone in the world understands. And I think we're spoiled by that. So
yeah, exactly. We were always big and bad. If you don't like it, leave. Come to us. And there's a lot more to the world than America.
Oh, I think that's an understatement. Before I joined the family business, I was a flight attendant, and I had the beautiful privilege of traveling and meeting people from all over the world. And that's truly where I fell in love with baking, was through my years in the airline industry. I would travel and taste something at a bakery or cafe and want to recreate it at home to share with friends and family, because I truly believe that food can break down barriers. You introduce new flavors and new things to open our culinary palates, but also to learn about the people that brought that to us. And it's a part of our everyday mission at Bake from Scratch. And I've been very public about the fact that I did not just want to start a magazine that has recipes for baking. I want to tell the stories of people that bake. I want to tell the cultural connections of things we know and love, but no one knows why or where.
Exactly.
And I believe that food is the great connector. And if we're not doing that part, then we shouldn't be just making and baking in our kitchens without a care in the world about where the story starts. So
Right.
it's an all-encompassing thing that ties back to the way we connect with the rest of the world.
Yeah, beautiful. What would you like on your tombstone?
You know, I've thought about this before. And I would either want people, or I would want it to say, you know, he always smiled, because I think your smile can convey kindness to people that are having bad days. And I love being happy. My grandmother and I talk a lot, and she's 92 years old. And she tells me, even now, 2 years after my grandfather passed away, that she has days she lets herself cry, but she wakes up the next day and says, I'm going to smile. And if I'm happy today, then everything is in a better place. So I would either want it to say, and he smiled, or I would want it to say, I did it my way. And that Frank Sinatra song kind of plays in my head as, if there were photos of me on a screen scrolling in memoriam, I hope the song I Did It My Way is played.
Right. Southern Girl Eats says he lit up every room he entered.
Hi, Laurie. Yeah, and Laurie is a fellow Southerner. She's from Mississippi, and she lives in Amsterdam, or outside of Amsterdam in the Netherlands. And we've been social media friends for years. She loves baking, and we connected through Bake from Scratch. But when we were in the Netherlands to do a magazine story on the baking traditions in Amsterdam and the bakeries, she came and met us, and we're actually in-person friends now because of the baking world. But she's
Very
from
nice.
Mississippi, and we shared that Southern connection, but also the love for Europe and the bakeries, and she was such a great guide to us. So
Cool, cool. What is it about your personality that drives your business?
I think the passion. If you don't have the passion, you are likely to burn out, or people will likely see straight through what you're attempting to portray. And I think my mom and my brother and everyone at Hoffman Media, I think we all bring a, like, your passion's here and you're in it commitment to our brands and what we do every day.
Okay. What is it about your personality that hinders your business?
Oh, you know, I'll just own it. My attention to detail is probably a lack of attention to detail is probably what I would love to improve upon. And I have to surround myself with people that can handle the details that I can't. And I do believe that is, I think it's something everyone should evaluate in business, is finding the things you don't do well or the things you don't enjoy, and surround yourself with people that do them better than you ever could. So my weakness, it's a hindrance, but I also have people around me that can, that get those finite details down, and my big ideas just keep flying.
That's good, because I think that's where I fail, is where you're talking. Having a strong team.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you were to travel cross country on a motorcycle, who would it be with?
My 92-year-old Mimi. She has such a passion for life, and she's always been one to say yes to adventure. And I could not imagine anything more fun at her age than being on a bike with her headed across the country.
Right. What was your favorite concert?
Oh, I love Amos Lee. I have traveled to Chicago, Atlanta, Paris, France, Birmingham twice when he's been here. I go to an Amos Lee concert any chance I get.
Amos Lee?
Amos Lee.
Okay. All right. What impact do you want to leave on your industry?
I want to leave an impact of change and passion. And, you know, I think being in an industry like magazine publishing, that if you think about just the last 10, 15 years, the constant stir of, is it failing? Are we going away? Is print dying? I've always been very committed to saying, no, we're not. We're just changing. And so I think embracing a changing media and digital landscape while still celebrating print products, there's room for both, and people love both, and that's been a big commitment to that from our company. So,
okay. When was the last time you cried?
Oh, probably last week. I cry a lot.
Not about doing laundry, right?
No crying about that laundry. No, I easily cry, you know, just in conversations with friends and with, you know, watching movies or television shows that evoke emotion. You know, last week was one of those low weeks for me during the quarantine time. It's funny how your mom has that sense of something, and I got a text from my mom and she said, "Are you okay?" And I just wrote back and said, "Nope, I'm in a funk actually." And just writing that text brought tears to my eyes. And I've allowed myself during this 6-month period to just have those moments that if the tears come, to let it flow, because
let them go.
We're all dealing with so many different things going on in just this 6-month period of our life, that there are low moments and high moments. And yeah, last week I let that cry happen.
All right, cool. When was the most difficult time in your business, and how did you all overcome it?
Wow. You know, our industry, like I talked about, has had many changes and evolutions over the last 10 years, but in the last 5 years especially, the retail environment on the newsstand, so where you buy magazines in the grocery store or the bookstores, that industry has had a lot of its own change. So a lot of independent bookstores closing or removing magazines from their inventory. I think it was 3 or 4 years ago now, we saw such a dramatic change in that part of our business that for the first time in a long time, we had a loss for the year. And being a family run and owned business, you know, you start to look around and think, what if we lost all of this? And I think every entrepreneur goes through those emotions and highs and lows in their business. But when we had a major drop in newsstand sales, and they're beyond our control because the entire industry went through it together. So you go, the good news is we were all in it together. The bad news is we all went through it together. But being a smaller business and a little more vulnerable, we had to really shift gears, and we've expanded our book publishing sector of our company. We've expanded our in-person event part of our company, and finding diverse revenue streams. That was a great wake-up call, because we had actually had some of the best years of our business on the newsstand in just the 3 previous years. So it was almost like we were riding that high and then kind of had that wake-up moment and had to say, okay, we put too many eggs in one basket. So it was a pretty scary time, and just emotional to go through, you know, a company that we need to make money, and losing money is not really an option. So
right. Yes. Do you have any Black friends?
Absolutely.
Okay. Do you often see people of color in your industry?
Absolutely, yes.
Who would you most like to have a conversation with?
Who would I most like to have a conversation with? I mean, let's say Oprah and Michelle Obama in the same sentence.
Yeah.
I would, you know, I think just Oprah alone, having some shared overlap in my industry, I really have a lot of admiration for what she did, the business she built. I should say the empire she built. I shouldn't even just say the business. and her journey that has landed her where she is today, and just someone I admire deeply. So Oprah, if you're watching, just give me a call. We'll schedule that conversation.
Have her people call your people.
Yeah. And by my people, I'll answer the phone. That's exactly how we'll do it.
Okay, so now we can get into your journey. And with that, Melissa Starks, what was the first thing you baked? What was the first thing you baked to start baking?
Biscuits with my mom. That is the very first thing I remember making with her as a child. On weekends, she would get in the kitchen and I would love to. I remember saying, "Can I help stir?" I just thought, whatever she's putting in the bowl, can I help stir? So I learned how to make biscuits with my mom, and that really didn't ignite the baking passion for me. I loved knowing how to do it, and I loved that we did that together. But I worked in a bakery when I was in high school. After school, a group of us from the same school, we all worked at this bakery, and I enjoyed being in that environment.
What kind of bakery was it?
It was it's Edgar's Bakery here in Birmingham. They now have multiple locations all over Alabama. But it was an old world bakery with breads, cakes, cheesecake, a cafe, so menu for lunch and some light dinner fare and stuff. And I remember thinking I loved the environment of what a bakery is and the happiness people experience from picking up a cake or getting a loaf of bread, and just that connection kind of piqued my interest. But I really didn't start baking and taking classes for baking until I was a flight attendant in the airline industry.
Okay, now hold it. After high school, then what happened?
After high school, I joined US Airways at the ticket counter here in Birmingham. And I was working part-time at the airport and going to UAB, the University of Alabama, Birmingham. And so I was balancing both. And I then transferred from Birmingham to West Palm Beach to work at the ticket counter there. I felt that sense of adventure and travel calling, and I had intended to also go to school in West Palm Beach and work. But at the time, US Airways they were running a human resource campaign called the Carrier of Choice Voice. I will never forget seeing this submission form where they wanted to hear from the employees about things that could enhance the airline and our experience as employees. And I wrote a proposal for why they should hire flight attendants at the age of 19. I was 19 and I wanted to be a flight attendant. And we were also at the time in a proposed merger with United Airlines, and they hired their flight attendants at 19. So I just said, if we're aligning companies and this is the intent of US Airways, and I got a letter back that said my idea had been selected as a change in company policy. I think I got a check for like $250. But I was also invited to interview. I did have to interview. I was not just given the job, but I had to interview for a flight attendant position. And I was in the very first training class that had 19-year-old flight attendants. So
good for you. Congrats.
So yeah, so that was one of my first times that I really, remember putting myself out there and saying, if this is what you want, start asking people for it. And the worst that they could say is no. And the best was the outcome that happened. And I became the youngest flight attendant ever hired at US Airways. So,
wow.
Yeah.
And how long were you there?
I worked for US Airways through 9/11 and lost my job the first time in January of the following year. So when the airline went into bankruptcy, they laid off a roster of flight attendants, and I was 5 people away from the cutoff. So I was hopeful and every day hanging on that hopefully I wasn't going to lose my job, but I did. And I went and flew for 6 months for one of the Delta Connection airlines. So on the smaller planes, flying in the Northeast out of Boston. And then US Airways brought me back to work, and I flew 6 more months for them. And then they went back into bankruptcy for their second time in 2 years. And I lost my job again. So that was it for me with US Airways. And I went to work for Alaska Airlines on the West Coast. And I lived in Anchorage, Alaska for 2.5 years before moving down to the airline's headquarters in Seattle, Washington.
Okay, what was that like?
Well, I will always say that there's a part of Alaska that's going to feel like home to me, because it's the last place on earth I ever thought I would live. I look back on my time in Alaska and wish that I had been more appreciative of the beautiful mountains, glaciers, just the outdoor experiences that are at your fingertips. I was younger, and now I would tell my younger self, like, push yourself outside of your comfort zone. I'm not a camper. I don't fish. I don't, the things that you would typically think of for an Alaskan, they're not in my personality set. So I had wonderful friends. I will say the airline community there was very tight knit, because most people that I interacted with had moved to Alaska. So we were all chosen family because we were so far away from our homes and our families in the lower 48. So it was a really great experience, but I wished I'd enhanced it more by doing more of the outdoor things.
Yeah. I lived in Atlanta, where I went to college at Morehouse, but I've always wanted to live in New York. So in Atlanta, I moved to New York, and like you, I was so worried about the next move. I'm like, wait a minute, Atlanta wasn't a bad place to live.
Right. But when your brain was already in New York.
Exactly. Now, I don't know who Cooper John is, but Cooper John also worked in Alaska.
So Cooper John, what did you do in Alaska?
Now, this is the guy that's in Birmingham.
Oh. Well, now we definitely have another connection. I'm going to have to bring food. We'll talk about Alaska, and I can see your beautiful items you make. Yeah, the woodwork items you do.
So after Alaska, then where'd you go?
I moved to Seattle, Washington, where Alaska Airlines' headquarters is located. And I worked in the new hire training program for flight attendants. So I became an instructor and taught people every day, and shared my passion for customer service and the airline industry with new hires.
I'm laughing because I can see you teaching, and I can see you in the middle of the aisle giving instructions.
So one thing I always talk about, and this references maybe what I said I wanted on my tombstone, I always talked about your smile in the aisle, that customers should never see anything but a smile on your face. You can get to the galley and pull the curtain and bang your head against the wall and be frustrated, but when you're out in front of a customer, you're smiling. And even during situations, people that are afraid to fly or they're uncertain, your smile can put them at ease and make them aware that nothing's wrong. And so I always talk about, it's more than just being kind. It's assuring people that they're safe and that their experience is going to be great.
Yep, comfort them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so after Seattle, then what?
So after Seattle, my mom contacted my brother and I both, and she had grown the business to a point that she said this is a no pressure conversation. She never wanted to be a parent that said, you need to join the business. We're going to be a family business. She said, we need to have a conversation about the future of the company. And she wanted to know if we had interest in joining her in business so that she could plan for us to either be generational and hand the company down to my brother and me, and then eventually maybe my brother's children, or if she needed to be making plans for what the future would be if we didn't join the company. So within 6 months of each other, my brother joined the company first, and it took me a little bit longer to resolve that I was, at a point that I was ready to leave the airline industry.
You didn't want to get out of them streets.
That flying and that travel and everything. So I told my mom, I said, I was ready to join the business, and I really appreciated everything she had built over the years and the sacrifices she had made. It really was something I felt a personal connection and desire to be a part of. But I told her that I was going to live in Seattle, that I was going to have to work from home, and I would travel to Alabama as needed, but that I was still very much at home in Seattle and on the West Coast. So for the first 3 years, I lived in Seattle and flew once or twice a month to Alabama or to New York or wherever I was needed for work, but I used Seattle as that home base point. But what I didn't anticipate in the 3 years was, first, that my brother was going to have children. So I wanted to be the best uncle I could be. So I definitely started thinking I need to be around them more because I want to be in their life. And the second thing was I was really, really falling in love with our business in a way that I did not anticipate day one, that I was going to really want to dive in and do more and find avenues of growth and just say yes to everything that was coming. And at the time, we had a board of directors that had seen a lot that I was doing, and they talked with my mom about a promotion to executive vice president in the company and becoming the chief creative officer. But it came with a move to Birmingham. They said he needs to be in the office. This is something that his impact is, really from afar. It's not something that that's going to do well by the business. So the first concern was, if I'm going to do this, I need to be in Birmingham. And so I was ready. I mean, my brain had already started wanting to be here more, wanting to connect more with my family, and then also be in the office. So,
okay, so let me pause you there. For someone who's traveled, me being from New Orleans, you being from Birmingham, were you thinking, damn, I don't want to go back there? Because you've been to all these places and home's a little small.
Yeah, I will say that was probably the biggest hurdle to overcome, was remembering the way I felt when I left Birmingham and said the world was going to become a place that I travel and I see, and I'm not going to stop exploring. And then it really took time, because I wanted to make sure that Birmingham had grown and become more of a diverse and accepting place that I felt comfortable. Being gay and moving back to Alabama is definitely not on your mind of like, this is going to be a great.
You're talking to a black man.
Yeah, I mean, right. And I absolutely understand now.
We can hold hands and go in there and fight them.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then I realized that Birmingham had become a better place than when I left it. And I also felt like, if I want to be a part of the change, and I want to be a part of a community that is going to be open, welcoming, accepting, and diverse, I had to be here and not standing on a sideline saying,
yes,
if Birmingham, Alabama would get better. And I thought, well, here I am. I get to be a part of a community. And, I live in the downtown area. I I love the beautiful people of Birmingham and of Alabama. And I believe that while history has not served us beautifully, the future is beautiful. And I
that we can
think
control.
that we can be a part of it. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so let me pause you for a second. All right, being two Southern boys. War Eagle or Roll Tide?
Oh my gosh. What if I say neither? Because UAB is in that middle ground.
What is neither?
But my brother, my grandfather, and my uncle are Roll Tide, went to Alabama. My mom and dad went to UAB. I have a few cousins that went to Auburn, so it's like by default Alabama, but even then I will say, and Kate Walthall is watching this right now, so she's absolutely gonna die when I say this, but I love Saturdays when football's on because I get to go eat at Chez Fon Fon and Bottega and the restaurants that I love eating at because I don't have to wait to get in. So football Saturday is great for me.
Look, and Kate just said you say Roll Tide.
Yeah, there. I knew we were gonna get there's the yep, and now the laughing face. Yep, there the comments scroll.
Yeah, I went to Tuskegee for a year and a half.
Okay, so you've got your Alabama connection.
Yep, yeah.
Would you pick Roll Tide or War Eagle? Did you say which one you would choose? Or are you gonna say like LSU or?
Yeah, I'm LSU. Yeah, don't like Bama.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? I got one more. There's another question that I recently added that I need to ask.
Okay.
If you had the opportunity to go to the moon, would you?
I'm very claustrophobic. So the thought of getting there just about made me like panic. Yes, I would go if I could be in a very spacious craft taking me there, because I would love to see what the Earth looks like from the other perspective. I feel like with aviation, you get a nice perspective from 40,000 feet. So in that respect, take me even higher and let me see things from there. But then that claustrophobia just kind of took over for a second.
So, and you were okay on planes, obviously.
Oh, absolutely. From the time that I was really, really young, I remember just sitting on an airplane and being just captivated, and flight grabbed me in a way that obviously led me to a career. And I remember my mom saying to me when I was a child, and I would say, I want to be a flight attendant. And she would say, don't you want to be a pilot? I mean, you know, pilots make so much more money. And it was never about the money. It was about,
I want to smile at the aisle.
I said, Mom, I can't talk to people if I'm up in that small cockpit at the front of the plane. I mean, no, I have to be able to talk to people.
Okay, so let's get into the bacon.
Let's.
So when did the bacon start?
So.
Oh, you were getting to that. I interrupted you.
No. So after I moved back to Birmingham and really, you know, dove into the business, and I saw that my mom had started magazines from her passions. Like, my mom loves collecting teacups and china and afternoon tea, and when she travels, she goes to hotels that are known for afternoon tea. And I remember thinking, she brought a brand. She started a magazine called Tea Time. She brought a brand to life from her brain. And that truly is the start of our company. Back in 1983, my mom and 3 other women started a cross-stitch magazine because the magazines that were on the marketplace at the time for people who loved cross-stitch did not deliver the content or the level of skill that they were at with their cross-stitching. And
okay, Brian, hold 1 second. I'm gonna pause you for a minute, right? I worked at Four Seasons Hotel for 20 years. I worked in the bar in Atlanta and New York City. And yes, Charles, $59.95. Tea Time was amazing. The tea sandwiches, the scones.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yes.
and for anyone who's listening to this, if you have not had proper tea in your life, you need to do it. Now, it could also be brunch. In the fancier places that do it well, it's like $50, but it's worth it because you get champagne.
I was going to say, make sure they serve champagne, and then your afternoon tea is perfectly set.
Okay, I'm sorry, so go ahead.
No, so when I realized how these brands were coming to life, I remember having a conversation with Brooke Bell, one of my coworkers that I've worked with now for 13 years. And she and I both enjoy baking. And all of our culinary magazines have had baking recipes, part of, holiday stories, or, we'll do a holiday baking issue once a year at Christmas time. But that wasn't enough, because some of us love baking in January and February, and you don't want to have gingerbread and peppermint in January. And then realizing how much I loved the baking industry. So the bakeries, the bakers, the bloggers that are in the baking world, and wanting to create a global baking community that was all for people that love baking, cover to cover. And so I remember having a conversation. We were driving actually from Birmingham to New Orleans to do a photo shoot, and somewhere in Mississippi on Highway 59, I think, the longest highway you've ever been on, because there's 40 miles with no exit, and sometimes you're just dying for a restroom or some Popeye's chicken. You know what I'm saying? So road trip food, gotta have it. But as we were driving, we said, just get out a piece of paper. Let's just jot down, if we were gonna create a baking magazine, what would it be? And what would we want to cover? And we just had this idea list that was running. And from there, we talked with some of our counterparts, newsstand consultants and people in the industry that we work with. And we said, baking is really trending right now, and I'm a passionate baker. Why don't we do this? And they said, do it. You need to do it. Get out there with a baking brand. And so we started an Instagram account first called The Bake Feed. And we wanted that first thing we did to bring together the baking community. So we not only shared photos of items we were baking, but we would find photos of other people that were posting their recipes. And we said, let's bring them into this community and highlight them as well. And then a few months later, we started the magazine. And we released our very first issue 5 years ago in September. And we said, what are we going to call it? And I remember thinking, we just need to have the big word bake so everybody can see it. And then we're going to have from scratch, because I want people to know that this is not about box mixes and shortcuts. And I don't want to say gimmicky, but it's not about the short process. It's about the celebration of scratch baking.
Yep.
And in the beginning, so many people said, why is it not called baked from scratch with a ED on the word bake? And I said, because once something has been baked from scratch, it's already done. I'm giving you the magazine and the inspiration to bake from scratch. You have to do that part. So it was always very intentional about motivating, encouraging, educating, and bringing together a group of bakers from around the world to celebrate. And it is my passion encapsulated into a brand. When I travel, I go and meet. I don't just go to a bakery and try something. I want to meet the person that owns the bakery. I want to hear their story. I want to talk to them, because I believe, again, like I mentioned earlier in our conversation, that story and that passion is part of why you're going to love their business. So I thought, well, we're going to have to include that in the magazine. So we always do a baker profile, either on a blogger, a bakery owner, a James Beard award-winning pastry chef. And from there, we take it to every tentacle we can. So it's been 5 years. It feels like the blink of an eye, because now I understand what my mom's career has been like. because I started this brand from my passion, from my brain, from my like dream list of what would it be, who would I work with, and where would I go. And it's just, the doors are still opening, and it's been amazing.
Very nice. What would you say to someone who wanted to start baking at home and someone who wanted to start a baking business?
Do it. I would say do it to both of those people. To the person that want to bake at home, so many people love cooking and they say, oh, I love cooking, but I can't bake. And I always answer that with, yes, you can bake. We just need to understand where you're starting. And a lot of people want to start with croissants or they want to start with macarons, or they want to start with things that are
It's damn French.
They're not a day one in the kitchen thing. And then because of that, I think they quickly say, I can't bake. I'm throwing up my hands. This is not for me. So I always encourage people, and I see Kate Walthall with her hand up. She just had a macaron situation that I was like therapy and counseling her as she was taking this macaron class. But I always say you're going to fail a lot of times in baking because it's a science and there's a process. And when you aren't sure if you've overmixed the dough or if you've overbaked it in the oven, you might eat a cake and say, oh, it was so dry and disgusting. I'm not making this again. But understanding what happens in that process is where I love to help people and say, yes, you can bake. Let's take it step by step and start with something that's pretty easy. Let's make a chocolate chip cookie. Let's make a pound cake, and then you can start pushing yourself into other areas once you gain that confidence in the kitchen. So that for me is like what I would say to a home baker is, yes, you're going to fail a lot in the beginning. And I don't say that to celebrate like, oh, it's not going to be easy. But when you're committed to wanting to learn it, you can do it. And then to someone that wants to open a bakery, I would say that they should do it because if they're passionately wanting to connect with people every day and share their love of baking, that has to be the number one reason you want to open a bakery. Because you're going to have early mornings where you rise before the sun. You're going to be there late into the night. And, as you scale up in a bakery, it's no, easy task. And I've never owned a bakery. I've worked in one and I've observed a lot that friends of mine who own bakeries, what they say. But if you truly love that day-to-day interaction with people, and sharing your passion for baking, then it's something that will absolutely work.
And you got to stick to it. It's unlike the laundry.
Yeah. The minute it becomes like the laundry, you've got to step out of that. You will not do well. You will not do well.
Right. You got to love it unconditionally.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So let's we got 5 minutes, so we got some questions. Just comments. Quarantine had everyone beginning baking with banana bread. True.
Yeah. And we did an IGTV series at the beginning of quarantine, and we did Banana Bread Bonanza was the very first thing we did. And I did 5 days of banana bread recipes that started with the simple, that moved into more complex, like using, cocoa powders and different sugars and different mix-ins. We did a Nutella swirl banana bread that was so beautiful. But yeah, good. that sourdough bread and banana bread are probably like they're the quarantine like bakers like preference right now,
What is your favorite thing to bake?
That changes, with my mood, and I think that's probably why I'm not a good candidate to open a bakery, because people love predictability, and once they love your one thing, they really need it there every day. I love to bake something new all the time. My one go-to that I love baking over and over and over again is a hummingbird cake. I never get tired of it. I think it fits every season. It fits every celebration.
What's a hummingbird cake?
it is pure heaven. If you've never had it, you have to make it. Or when I see you, when I come to New York, I will bring you a hummingbird cake. It has banana, pineapple, brown sugar, spices, cream cheese frosting. It is just decadent. Some people add nuts. That's where you start getting into the, like, you know, do you like your banana bread with nuts in it or your hummingbird cake with nuts in it? I'm a purist. I don't like nuts in the hummingbird cake. But my brother-in-law has a nut allergy. And so when I really started making hummingbird cake, he would always say, oh, you know, just make sure there's no nuts in it. So even recipes that called for pecans, I would omit them. And then I just fell in love with the cake. It also freezes beautifully. You can bake the layers, freeze the layers, and then when you're ready to ice the cake, you've got a delicious cake that does really well as a bake ahead. So it's really good, and you've got to have it.
All right. What baked good do you still find challenging to do every time for you?
I am not good at making pie. I almost now say I don't like pie at all, and I think it's now just like a personal like vendetta towards pie. You know, so it goes back to passion. So I'm gonna like connect it to either I need to really improve my skills at making pie dough, even though in my mind I know how to make pie dough, and I want to get better at it, but I also don't really love pie. Like, I don't find myself craving a slice of pie. I don't like ask friends of mine who are great at making pie to make one. I'm always like, if there's a cake and a pie, I'm reaching for a slice of cake. So I think because I'm not passionate about enjoying pie, it probably is a block in here on the like making it and perfecting it side of my world. So it's joint. I think the passion connects to the talent and the ability to want to do something. And if you don't like it, don't do it. So maybe pie is pie might be my thing. I just never master. And there's so many people that do it beautifully and better than I ever could. So, you know, let them have it.
All right. We have a minute and 26 seconds.
Okay. Oh, look, someone agrees with the pie. Yay.
Oh, Violet Rose says she feels the most common mistake is not freezing the butter or letting the ingredients get too warm.
Yeah, so the pie secret, she's absolutely right. You know, you've got to work with that perfect condition. I will say right now in the South, except for today where it's a little cooler, but with our 90-degree days and humidity, like you can see butter soften so quickly that you got to like keep going back and forth to the refrigerator.
And Char 5995 says, what do you do with all the bacon you do? Do you give it to your friends?
So I definitely share it with friends, but my first customer is my grandmother. She loves anything I bake. She's always so excited when I stop by, and you know, she lives alone, she's independent, and I just love the time I get to have with her. So taking baked goods to her, knowing she has sweet treats to, you know, to have during the days ahead, because I take enough.
All right, we got 10 seconds.
Okay.
So thank you very much. It was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. Yes, this was amazing.
And this is going to be saved on my page and YouTube.
Excellent.
All right.